There comes a moment in life when everything you thought you knew begins to crumble. Sometimes, it doesn't happen with a loud crash or a dramatic ending. It happens quietly, almost imperceptibly at first. The things you once found comfort in start to feel heavy, out of place, like wearing clothes that no longer fit. The dreams you used to chase with so much passion suddenly feel distant, like they belong to someone else entirely. And when you look in the mirror, it's not just your face you see, it's a stranger staring back at you. If you've ever felt this, I want you to know, it's not the end. It's a beginning. I've been there, that unsettling space where the familiar world begins to dissolve and you don't quite know who you are anymore. It can feel like you're breaking down, like you're losing yourself. But what if I told you, you're not losing anything real? You're shedding the layers that were never truly you in the first place. This is not a psychological crisis. It's not a sign that you're weak or lost. It is something far deeper, a rebirth. Think of it like a forest in autumn. The leaves fall, the branches grow bare, and at first glance, it might look like death. But beneath the surface, life is quietly preparing for spring. What you're experiencing right now is the falling away of everything that has run its course. Everything that can no longer grow with you. Your old identity, the roles you've played, the masks you've worn, the expectations you've carried, is dissolving. It has to, because your soul is ready to expand into something greater, something truer. I know it can feel terrifying. We humans are creatures of habit. We cling to what's familiar, even when it hurts us, even when it keeps us small. It's like standing on the edge of a cliff, terrified to leap, not realizing that there's a soft, endless sky waiting to catch us. But this is how evolution works. Not just the evolution of the body, but the evolution of consciousness. There's a part of you that has always been limitless, a part of you untouched by fear, shame, or doubt. That part has been whispering to you for years, guiding you, nudging you toward freedom. And now, it's getting louder. The structures that once defined you, your beliefs, your routines, even your sense of self can no longer contain who you truly are. So, they begin to fall apart. And that's why it feels like everything is breaking. But here's the truth. Nothing real can ever be destroyed. What's falling away are the illusions, the false identities, the old stories you've been carrying. What remains, once the dust settles, is you, the real you. The you that was here long before the world told you who to be. This is why I call it a rebirth. Imagine a caterpillar resisting the cocoon, terrified of change. It doesn't know that within that darkness, a miracle is happening. Wings are forming. In the same way, your discomfort, your confusion, even your grief right now, they are not signs that you are broken. They are signs that you are transforming. And when you emerge, you won't just return to who you used to be. You will rise as something far more vast, far more alive. So, if you find yourself standing in that in-between space today, no longer the person you were, but not yet the person you're becoming, take a deep breath. Trust this process. You are not falling apart. You are falling into place. This is the journey from the false self to the true self. From limitation to freedom. From fear to love. It is the greatest gift life can offer, the chance to finally live as who you truly are. And perhaps, one day soon, when you look in the mirror again, you won't see a stranger. You'll see a soul reborn. 1. The signs of ego dissolution. There comes a point in life when you start noticing something subtle but undeniable. The things that once lit up your world no longer carry the same weight. The goals you once chased with relentless passion now feel like trophies from a game you no longer want to play. Even the memories, the ones that used to define you, begin to feel strangely distant, like old photographs curling at the edges, fading in the sun. I know what it feels like. You wake up one morning and realize the person you've been carrying around in your head, the identity, the story, the role you thought was you doesn't fit anymore. The clothes feel too tight. The language feels outdated. Even your dreams feel borrowed. It's as if you've been living inside a house for years, only to notice one day that the walls are crumbling and the roof is leaking, and you can't stay here any longer. At first, it can feel terrifying. When the familiar begins to fall apart, the mind panics. It whispers something's wrong. You're losing yourself. You're falling behind. But what's really happening is far more profound. You are not losing yourself. You are losing the false self, the one built from expectations, fears, comparisons, and old survival patterns. The one shaped by what the world told you to be, not by what your soul came here to express. It's like holding a book you've been reading for decades. You've underlined the sentences, memorized the chapters, lived inside the plot. But now, as you turn the pages, the story doesn't move you the way it once did. The characters feel hollow. The ending feels predictable. That's when you realize this story is over. And it's not a tragedy. It's a liberation, because when the old story collapses, it leaves behind something priceless: space. Space for a new way of living. Space for a deeper authenticity to emerge. Space for you to finally hear the quiet voice inside that has been speaking all along, the voice of your true self. But here's the part. No one tells you ego dissolution rarely comes with fireworks or grand revelations. Most of the time, it arrives like dusk, softly, gradually, until one day, you realize the light has changed. You might notice you don't react the same way you used to. The arguments that once left you shaking now feel strangely empty. The ambitions that once drove you relentlessly now seem like someone else's dream. It can feel disorienting, even lonely, like you're standing in a doorway between two worlds, the old one fading, the new one not yet revealed. But I want you to hear this. There is nothing wrong with you. This is what it looks like when consciousness begins to outgrow its old container. Think of a snake shedding its skin. The skin served a purpose once. It offered protection, identity, structure. But there comes a time when the snake can no longer grow unless it lets the old layer fall away. That's what's happening to you. The old layers, the roles, the identities, the definitions are peeling off because they can no longer hold the magnitude of who you're becoming. And yes, it can feel like loss. It can feel like standing in an empty field after the harvest, staring at bare soil. But the field is not dead. It is waiting, waiting for the season to turn, waiting for the seeds of a truer life to be planted. So if you feel this right now, this emptiness, this shedding, this quiet unraveling, let it happen. Don't rush to fill the silence. Don't run back to what's familiar, because what's falling away was never truly you. The real you, vast, unconditioned, unshaken, has been here all along, beneath the noise, beneath the stories, waiting patiently for this very moment. This is not the end of your life as you know it. It is the end of the limits you thought were you. And on the other side of this ending, something extraordinary begins. 2. The moment of surrender, letting go completely. There comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you realize that most of the pain you've been feeling isn't coming from what's leaving your life, but from your resistance to letting it go. It's like trying to hold on to water with clenched fists. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. And yet, you keep trying, because part of you believes that if you just hold on a little harder, a little longer, you can keep things the way they were. I've been there. I know what it's like to cling to an old dream, an old relationship, an old version of yourself, not because it still fits, but because the idea of living without it feels unbearable. You tell yourself, if I let this go, who will I be? What will be left of me? But here's the truth. I learned the hard way. The thing you're clinging to is not saving you. It's weighing you down. Think of a caterpillar inside its cocoon. That cocoon was once its whole world. It kept the caterpillar safe, gave it structure, provided comfort. But there comes a moment when staying inside becomes suffocating. The walls that once protected now confine. If the caterpillar refuses to break free, it won't survive, and it will never know the miracle of its wings. We are no different. The fear you feel when life begins to change isn't a sign that you're breaking apart, it's a sign that you're on the edge of transformation. But as long as you keep fighting to preserve what is fading, you'll stay trapped in a painful limbo, caught between what was and what wants to be born. Letting go isn't easy. It can feel like standing at the edge of a cliff with your eyes closed, trusting that something unseen will catch you. Your mind will scream for certainty, for control, for guarantees. But the soul operates differently. The soul speaks in whispers, saying, "Trust me, jump, and you'll discover you were never falling at all, you were learning to fly." I know that sounds poetic, but I'm not talking about blind faith or wishful thinking. I'm talking about the deep, unshakable knowing that comes when you finally stop resisting and allow life to flow the way it's meant to. Here's what happens when you begin to surrender. At first, there's fear, a primal fear that tells you letting go means losing everything. But as you take that first step into surrender, something unexpected rises up to meet you. You begin to sense a quiet strength you didn't know you had. You start to notice small signs, a conversation that arrives at just the right time, an opportunity that appears out of nowhere, a feeling of peace settling in your chest for no logical reason. And slowly, you realize that letting go didn't destroy you. It liberated you. The pain begins to fade, not because life magically fixed itself, but because you've stopped waging war with reality. You're no longer dragging around the weight of something that no longer belongs to you. The energy you once spent clinging and controlling becomes free, available for creation, for healing, for growth. Letting go doesn't mean giving up or admitting defeat. It doesn't mean you no longer care. It simply means you've stopped forcing life to fit a mold that's too small for who you are becoming. It's like opening a tightly closed fist. At first, it feels vulnerable, exposed. But then you realize an open hand can receive. The moment you truly surrender, you make space for the new to arrive. You allow what is meant for you to flow in, naturally and effortlessly, without the constant strain of trying to make things happen. And here's the most beautiful part: when you look back, you'll see that what felt like destruction was actually grace in disguise. The relationships that ended, the dreams that dissolved, the chapters that closed, they weren't punishments. They were the exact conditions needed for your rebirth. So, if you find yourself in this place now, trembling between holding on and letting go, take a breath. Remind yourself that letting go is not the end. It's the doorway to freedom. Because the truth is, you were never meant to live in a cage, even one you built yourself. And the moment you stop clutching the bars and open your hands, you'll discover they were never locked. The door has been open all along, just waiting for you to step through. When you surrender completely, you don't lose yourself. You find yourself vast, limitless, and finally free. 3. The death and rebirth of the ego. There's a moment in every deep transformation when words begin to fail. It feels like an ending, but not the kind you can see, touch, or explain to others. It's quiet, invisible, and deeply personal. To the outside world, you may look the same, speak the same, go about your daily life. But inside, something is collapsing. This is what I call the death of the ego. And no, it's not the death of your body, nor is it a literal death. It's the unraveling of all the things you've been taught to believe you are, the roles you've played, the rules you've followed, the stories you've repeated to yourself for years until they felt like truth. The ego is like a mask you've worn for so long, you forgot it wasn't your actual face. It once helped you survive, just like a suit of armor protects a warrior in battle. It gave you a sense of identity, a way to navigate the world, to feel safe, to belong. But over time, that armor began to weigh you down. Instead of protecting you, it started to imprison you. When the ego begins to die, it can feel like you're losing everything. Your relationships might shift. The things you thought you wanted no longer make sense. Even the way you talk to yourself changes. And yes, it can be terrifying because the mind clings to the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. I remember walking through this phase myself. There were days I felt completely lost, as if I was wandering through a fog. The dreams I used to chase no longer felt alive, but the new dreams hadn't yet revealed themselves. It was like standing between two worlds, the old one dissolving, the new one not yet formed. That space in between is sacred, even though it feels like chaos. It is here, in this in-between space, that the truest part of you begins to emerge. Think of the sky after a storm. While the storm rages, everything feels dark and violent. You can't see clearly. But when the storm finally passes, there's a breathtaking stillness, a vast, clear sky stretching endlessly above you. That is what happens when the ego dies. The storm is the unraveling of false beliefs, identities, and limitations. The clear sky is what remains when they fall away. Your infinite awareness. You begin to see that who you really are has nothing to do with titles, achievements, or roles. You are not your job. You are not the mistakes you've made. You are not the labels that others have placed on you or the ones you've placed on yourself. When the ego dies, you finally recognize this truth. You have never been those things. What remains is something vast, quiet, and unchanging. It's the presence that has been with you through every season of life. It's the you that witnessed your childhood joys and heartbreaks, your triumphs and failures. It's the awareness that has never aged, never been diminished by the stories you've carried. And when you touch that awareness, even for a moment, there's a deep sigh of relief, because you realize that nothing real can ever be destroyed. The death you've been fearing isn't a loss at all, it's a release. The old shell falls away so that your authentic self can breathe freely for the first time. It's like a seed breaking open in the dark soil. From the outside, it looks like destruction, but within that breaking is the beginning of new life. Without it, the seed could never grow into what it was meant to become. This is the paradox of ego death. What feels like an ending is really a birth. As the old layers of identity crumble, you make space for something greater, a deeper truth, a pure love, a more expansive way of being. It doesn't happen all at once. There are moments of fear, moments of confusion, and moments of profound clarity, but little by little, the false self dissolves, and the essence of who you truly are begins to shine through. When this happens, life doesn't necessarily become perfect, but it does become real. You no longer feel like you're performing a role just to please others or to fit in. You start living from a place of wholeness, and just like the sky after the storm, your true self stands revealed vast, open, and unshaken. So if you are in this process now, and it feels like everything is falling apart, trust that beneath the chaos, something beautiful is being born. The death of the ego is not the end of you. It's the end of the illusion of who you thought you were and the beginning of who you really are. 4. Understanding the true nature of the self. There comes a point in this journey when you begin to ask yourself a simple but life-altering question. Who am I? Really? Not the version you show to the world. Not the one that wears a name, a title, a story, but the essence beneath it all. The silent witness who has been here through every season of your life. Most of us grow up believing we are our stories. We say, I am this kind of person. I like these things. I have this past. I want this future. These statements feel so natural, so incuestionable, that we never stop to notice how fragile they really are. But here's the truth: what you call yourself is, in many ways, a collection of memories, habits, and cultural programming, a patchwork quilt stitched together by the expectations of family, society, and survival. Think about it. The language you speak, the beliefs you hold, even the food you crave, these were all given to you before you were old enough to choose for yourself. You inherited them like hand-me-down clothes, wearing them long after they stopped fitting. Over the years, this borrowed identity becomes so familiar that you mistake it for your essence. You say, "This is who I am," when, in truth, it's just who you learn to be. When life begins to strip away these layers, it can feel unsettling, even frightening. You might think, if I am not my memories, my roles, my past, then who am I? It's like standing in a room that's been emptied of furniture. At first, it feels barren and strange. But as you stand there quietly, you realize the room itself, the space was always there. It was never defined by what filled it. That space is you. The real you isn't the clutter of thoughts and labels. It's the clear, open awareness that holds it all. When you start to see this, life begins to shift. You no longer take every thought at face value. A memory arises, and instead of being swept into it, you can simply notice it. A fear surfaces, and instead of shrinking, you can breathe through it. You begin to understand that these experiences are passing weather, not the sky itself. The ego will fight this realization. It will tell you, without these stories, you are nothing. Without these roles, you don't exist. But that isn't true. The stories were never you. They were like costumes in a play, necessary for a time, perhaps even beautiful, but never the essence of the actor wearing them. Imagine an actor who becomes so immersed in a role that he forgets he's acting. When the play ends, he panics, thinking his world has ended. But in reality, he is simply stepping out of a role and back into himself. This is what happens when the programming begins to dissolve. You are not disappearing. You are returning. As these layers fall away, you don't lose yourself. You find yourself. What remains is a pure, steady presence that has been here all along. A presence that isn't wounded by the past, that doesn't crave validation, that isn't trapped by fear. It's the same presence that watched over you as a child, that held you through heartbreaks, that quietly observed every moment of your life without judgment. It has never been harmed, never been diminished, never been broken. This realization is profoundly healing, because when you touch that pure awareness, you see that nothing essential was ever lost. The pain, the mistakes, the regrets, they all belong to the layers, not to you. And as you live from this awareness, the old programming begins to loosen its grip. You stop living on autopilot. You stop chasing approval or fearing rejection. You move through the world with a quiet clarity, knowing that who you are cannot be threatened or taken away. Life becomes simpler, not because challenges disappear, but because you no longer confuse them with your identity. You see them as passing storms, while you remain the open sky, vast, unshaken, and free. This is the gift of understanding the true nature of the self, realizing that beneath all the noise and conditioning, there is a stillness that has never been touched by pain, a light that has never dimmed. And once you know this, even for a moment, you can never see yourself or the world the same way again. 5. The ripple effect on humanity. When you begin to heal, when you start peeling away the layers of illusion and step into your truest self, it can feel like something very personal, very private. It often begins quietly, a moment of clarity here, a subtle shift there, and at first, you may believe it's only about you and your journey. But the deeper you go, the more you realize that your awakening does not stop at the edges of your skin. It radiates outward, like ripples moving across a still lake. Every breath you take in awareness, every moment, you choose compassion over fear. Every time you let go of an old pattern, instead of passing it down, it matters. It matters more than you may ever see. We tend to think of change on a grand, dramatic scale: leaders making speeches, nations signing treaties, movements filling the streets. Those are powerful moments, yes, but the roots of true transformation grow in the quiet soil of individual lives. Imagine a single candle being lit in a dark room. At first, it seems small, almost fragile, but as more candles are lit from that single flame, the darkness begins to recede. One light becomes many, and what was once invisible is now illuminated. Your healing is like that first candle. When you face your own shadow and choose to release it, you are not just liberating yourself, you are clearing a path for others to see more clearly. The patterns that bound you, fear, shame, anger, scarcity, are often the same patterns that have been passed through families, communities, and generations. By breaking free, you interrupt the cycle. You say, "It ends with me," and that decision ripples outward. Maybe your children grow up in a home where love is expressed openly, instead of hidden behind walls of pride. Maybe your friends feel safe enough to share their truth because they've witnessed you living yours. Maybe a stranger is touched by a simple act of kindness you offer on a day when they needed it most. You may never know the full impact of these small moments, but they accumulate. Each one is a thread in a vast, invisible tapestry, the collective evolution of humanity. This is why the death of the ego is not just a personal event. It is a collective necessity. When one person awakens, it sends a signal into the field of consciousness. We all share. Think of humanity as a single body. Each of us is like a cell within it. When one cell heals, it affects the whole system. When enough cells awaken, the body begins to transform. The world's suffering, the conflicts, the divisions, the greed. These are symptoms of a collective ego, struggling to maintain control. Each individual ego clings to its story, its separateness, its need to be right. But as more of us release these illusions, the grip loosens. Slowly, the larger structures built on fear begin to crumble. This is why your inner work is never just for you. Every moment, you choose presence instead of reaction, love instead of judgment. You are anchoring a new possibility for our species. You are quietly contributing to the foundation of a different kind of world, one where authenticity and connection replace masks and power struggles. Sometimes people say, "I'm just one person. What difference can I make?" But consider this: a single drop of water seems small, yet enough drops can carve valleys, shape rivers, even wear down stone. Your awakening is one of those drops, and when combined with the awakening of countless others, it becomes a wave, a tide that cannot be stopped. That tide is already rising. You can feel it in the way old systems are collapsing, in the questions more people are asking, in the longing for something real and true. Every ego death is a brick removed from the old walls of separation. Every rebirth is a new brick laid in the foundation of collective freedom. So when you feel small or powerless, remember this: your healing is an act of service to the whole. The moments you sit quietly, breathing through pain, instead of passing it on, are moments when you are literally reshaping the future of humanity. You may not see the ripple reach the shore, but it is moving, always moving, touching lives you will never know. And perhaps, someday, when enough of us have chosen to awaken, we will look back and see that what began as individual transformations was, in truth, the birth of an entirely new world. The death of your ego is not the end of you. It is the beginning of us. 6. Moving beyond the fear of loss. One of the hardest parts of transformation is the feeling that you are losing everything. When the old structures in your life begin to fall away, relationships, identities, beliefs, and routines, it can feel as though the ground beneath you has vanished. Suddenly, what once felt certain is no longer there to hold you. This is where fear often rises like a tidal wave. The mind whispers, "If I let go of this, there will be nothing left. I will be nothing." And in that moment, it's easy to believe that what is dissolving is your very self. I know this fear well. There was a time in my own journey when I felt stripped bare. Everything I had built my life around was falling apart: dreams, connections, even the way I understood myself. I remember lying awake at night, staring into the dark, terrified that the emptiness I felt inside would swallow me whole. But here's what I came to understand. Slowly and painfully, at first, you are not actually losing yourself. You are only losing what was never truly you to begin with. It's like standing outside at dawn. For a moment, before the sun rises, the world feels dark and uncertain. You might mistake the darkness for reality itself. But when the light finally comes, you realize that nothing was ever missing: the trees, the mountains, the landscape were there all along. The darkness was only a temporary veil. Loss works the same way. When the old parts of your life fade away, it feels like annihilation. But as the dust settles, you begin to see clearly what disappeared was never your essence. It was the veil, the temporary roles and stories you were carrying, the relationships that couldn't meet you at your truest self, the beliefs that once kept you safe but now keep you small. The light that remains is who you've always been. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. Over the years, you've grown so used to its weight that you forget what it feels like to stand tall and unburdened. When someone gently lifts the backpack from your shoulders, your first instinct might be panic. You reach back, grasping for what's gone, because its weight had become familiar. But give yourself a moment. Take a deep breath. Notice what you feel. You're lighter now, freer. The loss of that weight was not a tragedy, it was a gift. The same is true for the losses you experience during deep transformation. It's not that you're being punished or stripped of something essential. You're being returned to your natural state. You are shedding the heaviness that was never meant to define you. Of course, the fear doesn't disappear overnight. The ego has spent years equating identity with possessions, relationships, titles, and external validation. When these things begin to fall away, the ego trembles. It says, "If I am not these things, then I am nothing." But the truth is, what you are can never be destroyed. Your body may change. Your circumstances may shift. Your roles may come and go. But the awareness beneath it all, the presence that witnesses every rise and fall, remains untouched. That is your eternal self. That is the part of you that cannot be lost. No matter what happens in the physical world, when you begin to sense this, even just for a moment, the fear of loss softens. You start to see each ending not as a collapse, but as a clearing, a space opening for something truer to emerge. Think of a forest fire. At first, it seems like devastation. The trees are burned, the landscape scarred. But beneath the ash, the soil is being renewed. Seeds that have lain dormant for years suddenly have the space and nutrients they need to grow. New life rises from what looked like ruin. Your soul works the same way. When the old falls away, it creates fertile ground for the new. So when fear grips you, pause and breathe. Remind yourself gently, what is real cannot be taken from me. What fades was never truly mine. With each release, you step closer to the unshakable truth of who you are. You begin to understand that loss is not the end of your story. It's the rewriting of it. And one day, when you look back, you'll see that nothing essential was ever lost. The love remains. The awareness remains. You remain. The rest was just shadows passing before the dawn. 7. The journey of living in emptiness. There comes a moment in the process of deep transformation when everything familiar begins to dissolve, yet the new has not fully taken form. It's like standing in a doorway between two worlds behind you. The old life crumbles into pieces, and ahead of you lies something vast and unknown, still hidden in the mist. This stage feels like emptiness. You are no longer who you once were, but you have not yet become who you are meant to be. It's a strange, disorienting space. You may wake up in the morning and feel as if you've lost your bearings. The things that used to define you, your roles, your ambitions, even your routines don't make sense anymore. And yet, when you reach for something new, your hands close around air. This emptiness can feel unbearable at first. The mind doesn't like open spaces. It wants to fill every gap with plans, explanations, and labels. It whispers, "Something must be wrong. You need to fix this. You need to figure out what comes next." But the truth is, nothing is wrong. This is exactly where you are supposed to be. Imagine a garden in winter. At first glance, it seems lifeless. The branches bare, the earth frozen, the flowers gone. But beneath the surface, something essential is happening. The soil is resting, replenishing its strength, preparing for the burst of life that will come in spring. Your soul goes through a similar cycle. This stage of emptiness is not a void to fear, but a sacred pause. It is the place where your old patterns have fallen away, and your true self is quietly gathering the energy it needs to emerge. It's tempting to rush through this phase, to grasp at anything that gives you a sense of identity again. You might want to fill the silence with constant activity, distractions, or new relationships, just to avoid feeling the discomfort of not knowing. But transformation has its own timing. A butterfly cannot be forced to emerge before its wings are ready. If you can stay with the emptiness, breathe through it, to rest in it, you will discover something extraordinary. At first, you may notice subtle shifts, a calmness that wasn't there before, a sense of peace that comes not from solving problems, but from simply being present with what is. It's like sitting beside a quiet lake. The surface may seem still, but beneath it, life is stirring in ways you cannot yet see. Over time, this silence becomes a source of strength. You begin to see that you are not defined by the noise of your thoughts or the roles you play. You are the space in which all of it rises and falls. This realization brings a kind of freedom that no external achievement can offer. Of course, there will be days when the emptiness feels heavy. You may long for the comfort of the familiar, even if it was painful. You may question whether you are strong enough to endure this uncertainty. In those moments, be gentle with yourself. Remember, this space is not a punishment. It's a womb. Just as a seed must rest in darkness before it can break open and grow, your soul is being prepared in ways you cannot yet understand. The silence is shaping you, nurturing you, and strengthening the roots of who you truly are. Allow yourself to slow down, to listen, to feel. Instead of rushing to escape the emptiness, sink into it. Notice the rise and fall of your breath. Notice the subtle hum of life all around you, the sound of the wind, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the simple fact that you are here. These small moments of presence are how your soul begins to grow its wings. One day, without even realizing it, you will look back and see how essential this stage was. The emptiness that once felt like an ending will reveal itself as the fertile ground of your rebirth. Until then, trust this quiet space. Trust that something new is forming, even if you cannot see it yet. Because in the stillness of this sacred pause, your true self is being born gently, patiently, and in perfect time. 8. Flowing with the rhythm of the universe. There comes a point, after all the breaking and shedding, when a subtle shift begins to happen inside you. It's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet like the moment before dawn when the world is still, and a soft light begins to touch the horizon. This shift happens when the ego, the part of you that always tries to control, finally loosens its grip. For so long, you may have lived like a swimmer, fighting against a powerful current, thrashing and straining to get somewhere, to prove something, to make life bend to your will. Every decision felt heavy. Every outcome was a battle to win or lose. Even when you were exhausted, you couldn't stop because slowing down felt like failure, and surrender felt like defeat. I know this place well. I've lived inside that storm of striving, of endless pushing, and I've felt the ache of it deep in my bones. But when the ego begins to dissolve, you start to realize something simple, yet profound. You were never meant to fight the current. Life has its own rhythm, its own intelligence, the same force that makes the tides rise and fall, that turns seasons without effort, that causes flowers to bloom in perfect timing. That same force moves through you. When you stop trying to control everything, you begin to feel this rhythm. You start to notice how life flows on its own, carrying you gently forward like a river. At first, it feels strange, almost too easy. Your mind might resist, whispering, "This can't be right. If I'm not forcing it, it won't happen." But as you soften into this flow, something beautiful happens. Opportunities begin to appear, not through frantic effort, but through a natural unfolding. A conversation happens at just the right moment. A door opens you didn't even know was there. A solution you've been struggling to find arrives in a quiet, unexpected way. Some people call this synchronicity. I think of it as alignment. It's like being part of a great symphony. When you were in the grip of ego, you were trying to play every instrument, conduct the orchestra, and write the music all at once. No wonder you felt overwhelmed. But when you align with the flow of life, you realize you were never supposed to do all of that. You are simply one note, one melody, perfectly timed within the greater song. This doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. Flow is not passivity. It's presence. It's listening deeply for when to act and when to wait. It's trusting the timing of life even when you don't understand it. There will still be challenges. Rivers have rapids, and life has storms. But when you're in harmony with the current, even those rough waters don't feel like punishment. They become part of the journey, shaping you, teaching you how to move with strength and grace. The old way of living, constantly fighting, forcing, grasping, begins to fade. You no longer need to chase what is meant for you, because what is meant for you cannot miss you. And here's the most beautiful part: as you flow with life, you become part of the greater harmony of the universe itself. You notice how everything is connected. The people you meet, the events that unfold, the inner nudges you feel, they all start to make sense, like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. This is where magic happens. Not because you've manipulated reality, but because you've stopped standing in its way. There's a deep peace that comes with this way of living. It doesn't mean everything is perfect or pain disappears forever. It simply means you stop adding unnecessary suffering by resisting what is. You begin to trust. Trust that the river knows where it's going. Trust that even detours have purpose. Trust that you are part of something vast and intelligent, even if you can't see the whole picture. When you live this way, life feels less like a series of battles and more like a dance. Some days you lead, some days you follow, but either way, you move with the rhythm instead of against it. And in that movement, there's a quiet joy, the joy of finally remembering you were never separate from the universe at all. You were always part of the flow, part of the song, part of the great unfolding that continues, moment by moment, without end. 9. A new life after rebirth. There comes a day, often quiet, almost unremarkable, when you realize you've crossed a threshold. It doesn't happen with a flash of lightning or a sudden revelation. Instead, It arrives like the first soft light of dawn after a long night. You look around and see the same world, the same faces, the same circumstances, but something has shifted. You have shifted. The battles that once consumed you no longer hold the same weight. The voices of fear and self-doubt, though they may still whisper, no longer have the power to steer your life. There's a lightness in your chest, a clarity in your mind, and a deep, quiet joy in your heart. This is life after rebirth. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about finally living as who you've always been, beneath the layers of conditioning and pain. In this space, relationships take on a different quality. You no longer cling to people out of fear of abandonment, nor do you perform roles just to earn love or approval. Instead, you show up as your authentic self, open, honest, and free. And something beautiful happens when you do this. The right connections begin to flow naturally into your life. The people who resonate with your true essence seem to appear at just the right time, while those who are no longer aligned gently drift away. There's no drama in this process, no need for blame or resistance. It's as if life itself is curating the relationships that nourish your soul. Creativity, too, begins to flow in ways you never imagined. When you were trapped in the old patterns of ego, creativity may have felt forced, like wringing water from a dry sponge. You had to push, plan, and strive to make anything happen. But now, ideas and inspiration arise effortlessly. They seem to come from somewhere beyond you, as if you've tapped into an endless well of possibility. Whether it's art, problem-solving, or simply finding new ways to move through daily life. This flow of creativity feels joyful and unrestrained. You realize that true creativity is not about control. It's about allowing something larger than yourself to move through you. Even your relationship with your body begins to transform. Stress and tension, once so deeply woven into your muscles and breath, begin to dissolve. You listen to your body with tenderness instead of judgment. You rest when you need to, move when you're inspired, and nourish yourself with care. And the body responds to this love. Energy returns. Healing accelerates. It's not magic, but it feels magical. The natural intelligence of the body finally free to do what it was always designed to do. Thrive. The same is true of abundance. Money, resources, and opportunities no longer feel like things you must chase or fight for. Instead, they begin to flow toward you in a natural way, like rivers converging into the sea. You understand that abundance isn't about greed or luck. It's about alignment. When you are living in harmony with your true self, the universe responds by providing what you need to fulfill your purpose. Decisions, too, become simpler. In the past, every choice may have been tangled in fear and overthinking. You might have second-guessed yourself endlessly, trying to predict every possible outcome. But now, decisions arise from a place of deep knowing. You feel your way forward rather than forcing your way forward. You act not to impress others or to protect an image, but because it feels true, even when challenges come, and they will. Because life will always bring growth, you meet them differently. Instead of being swept away by panic or resistance, you face difficulties with grace. You trust the process, knowing that even pain carries wisdom. And perhaps the most profound change of all is this: love becomes your default state, not the fleeting, conditional love that depends on external circumstances. Buddha quiet, steady love that flows from within. You see others not as enemies or competitors, but as fellow travelers on their own journey. Even when someone hurts you, you can hold compassion for their pain without sacrificing your boundaries. This kind of love is not naive. It's clear-eyed and grounded. It's the love of someone who has walked through darkness and understands the fragility of life. When you live from this place, life no longer feels like a battle to be won. It feels like a dance, a conversation, a continuous unfolding. You are no longer limited by the beliefs that once kept you small. You don't need to prove your worth or defend your existence. You simply are, and that is enough. This is the gift of rebirth, to live each day with clarity, to act from pure love, and to move through the world with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they are part of something vast and unbreakable. In this way, your very presence becomes a blessing not because you are trying to change the world, but because you are the change. The life you live becomes a reflection of freedom itself, showing others what is possible when we return to who we truly are. The threshold of a new beginning. This journey you've been walking is not just your personal story. It is part of something much larger, a collective awakening, a movement of consciousness rising through humanity itself. As you shed the old layers of who you thought you were, you are quietly contributing to the healing of the whole. There was a time when this process may have felt like death, when everything familiar seemed to slip through your fingers, leaving you raw and uncertain. But now, you can see it for what it truly is, not an ending, but a profound rebirth. Just as the dawn breaks after the longest night, and you, too, are emerging into a new light. The old self, with all its defenses and masks, had to fade away so that your true essence could step forward. And that essence was never fragile, never small. It has always been infinite, untouched by pain, waiting patiently for the moment you were ready to see it. There's a quiet beauty in this unfolding. You don't need to rush it. You don't need to force it. Like the petals of a flower opening to the sun, your transformation happens naturally when you allow it. Every moment of surrender, every tear shed, every breath taken in courage, they are all part of this gentle blooming. And so I invite you now to trust the process. Trust that even when the path feels unclear, life knows what it's doing. Trust that the storms you've weathered were not meant to destroy you, but to clear the way for new growth. Trust that nothing real can ever be lost, that who you truly are has been safe all along, like a flame protected within the deepest chamber of your being. As you release the false identities, you make room for the truth of yourself to step into the light. You are not the roles you've played, the wounds you've carried, or the fears you've held close. You are the awareness beneath it all, vast, luminous, and free. When you feel ready, there's no need for grand gestures or public declarations. You don't have to announce your rebirth to the world. Instead, let it begin quietly, intimately. Simply whisper a single word: reborn. This is not a word for others to hear. It is a promise you make to your own soul, a vow that you are ready to live as the truest version of yourself. A commitment to honor the infinite part of you that has been waiting so patiently beneath the noise of everyday life. Imagine this moment as a doorway. On one side lies everything. You've outgrown the patterns, the illusions, the heavy weight of old stories. On the other side lies freedom, authenticity, and a life guided by love rather than fear. Today, that doorway is open. You don't need to know what's waiting on the other side. You only need the courage to take a single step forward. With that step, you are not leaving yourself behind. You are finally coming home. And as you cross that threshold, you will discover that this rebirth is not just for you. Every soul that awakens adds light to the collective, making it easier for others to awaken. 2. Your transformation becomes a beacon, a living reminder that renewal is possible, even after the longest and darkest of nights. So breathe deeply. Let the old layers fall away like autumn leaves drifting to the earth. Stand tall in the light of your own becoming, and when you are ready, step fully into this new life, a life of freedom, of truth, of infinite possibility. Because the journey has never been about becoming someone else. It has always been about remembering who you've been all along. Welcome yourself home. Welcome to a life unbound. Welcome to rebirth.